Welcome to Diary of a Sheep Dairy Farmer, where we talk all things dairy sheep, from breeding to lambing to milking and everything in between and outside. I'm your host Becca, owner, operator, and glorified farmhand of Hidden Hollow Sheep Dairy. Welcome back, guys, to another day of dairy sheep. Oh, what a week it has been. We stayed up way too late on election night at the county offices where they were counting the votes in live time last week, getting the printouts, the handouts, the whatever you want to call them, as they were coming through and updating, and it was like a well-oiled machine. I mean, they were whipping through them. It was really cool to watch. I am happy to say my husband won his race. He received 65% of the vote, leaving no doubt that he was the people's pick. Then we spent 4 days picking up all his political signs across the county. And it took us 2 months to put those things up, and we had 48 hours to take them down. We did not make the deadline, but because it was a holiday weekend, the code enforcers were not worried about the signs. They were worried about people's safety, so they weren't even going to deal with them until after the holiday. So we were able to get everything down before it became an issue. So I am a little late getting to recording the podcast this week. I'm hoping I can still get it out by Wednesday, but just because of everything we had going on. I told my husband to remind me in 4 years, when his term is up and he's running again, not to plan a lambing group in May. I mentally cannot do this again. I cannot run an election. I cannot do it all. I cannot lamb. I cannot run an election. I am not Superwoman. I cannot do it. I was so mentally done. My brain literally, somebody asked me a question and I could not answer. I had to look at my husband. A simple question. I think they were asking me when I was going to start milking. And I made some comment about, well, in April. And they're like, you mean June? I'm like, no, April. They're like, we're in May. I said, yeah, in April. April comes after May. No, April comes before May, dummy. In June. Oh, I was out of it. So, yes, in 4 more years, there will be no lambing while an election is going on. But I don't have to worry about it. I can still do my own thing for the next several years. Anyway, it was dumb on my part, to be honest. I was so focused on the November election, kind of forgot all the work we would have to do in the primary for him to get onto the November ticket. Anyways, enough politics. Lord knows we're going to hear enough of it all year as it is. Back to sheep. On the bright side, my ewes did grace me with the last of my lambs on Saturday. I have never been so happy to have a lambing group done. And I am so happy with how well this group did. Not that I did much other than show up each morning and each night to keep watch over them, but still, I was here physically, if not always mentally. I was drained by the time it was all said and done. I know I have said before that I wasn't milking my February and March group, but I will be milking some of this April-May group. I prefer to wait until after the lambs are a month old before I start milk sharing with mom. It's just my personal preference. I want my lambs to have their best start to life, and if that means getting the best part of mom's milk before I start milking, so be it. So this group had the majority of my mature, experienced ewes. I'm not saying things didn't go wrong at times, because those things happen even to the best of ewes. I had a few stillborns, a couple rejections, a couple fosters and graftings, and as much as I tried not to, I have a whole slew of bottle babies. I had compromised udders, I had a couple cases of mastitis that appeared out of nowhere. I knew I was going to have to do a heavy cull on this group just for the age of my ewes. I have one ewe, she just turned 10, and others that are 7, 8 years old. For milking purposes, I shouldn't be keeping anything older than 6 years old, but I'm a softie, and I have a really hard time getting rid of favorite ewes that have been with me forever and have helped me start my flock, even though their daughters and granddaughters and great-granddaughters definitely outmilk them. That being said, my amazing husband has finally found someone who can weld stainless steel and fix the head catches on my stanchions. So sometime in the next 2 weeks, I need to pick out a dozen or so ewes I want to milk, get them and their lambs separated from the rest of the flock. Hopefully by then, I will have my stanchions. We actually need to tear everything apart, haul them to the guy that's going to fix them, and hope that he will get them back to us in a timely manner. I do know he is extremely busy because he is extremely good and one of the only people around that does this type of welding. So we're crossing our fingers in hopes that I will get my equipment back in a timely manner to still be able to milk this season. So in between graduation parties, weaning the February-March group, spraying weeds, getting equipment ready for hay season, which is right around the corner. Yeah, work is never ending on the farm. It is a good thing we love it, or we would go crazy from it. I did play a lot of musical lambs this go around, and the problem with really good moms is they want all the babies. I had ewes that would lamb next to one another, and this ewe wanted 3 of the lambs, and this ewe wanted 2 of the lambs, and there were only 4 lambs to go around. I had a couple times, which did work in my favor, so I'm not going to complain, where I had a ewe give birth to triplets right beside a ewe that had a single, and that singleton mom claimed one of the triplets. Instant foster, hallelujah. Other times, I had lambs get lost from their mom, and then mom didn't think that lamb was theirs, and then there was a fight to get it back to them. And don't get me started on the udders. You guys, I don't know. This one's on me. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know where it went wrong. I missed something, and I can't tell you what it was. I did an udder check last year sometime. I'd have to go back in my records to find out when, because my memory is not good enough for me just to instant recall. I want to say when they came in for me to breed them, I checked their udders, but I'm not going to lie and say that's exactly when I did it because I really don't know without checking. Let's just say we did, and then when we tossed everybody out on pasture for the winter after breeding was over, I never looked at them again until they started to lamb. So I messed up somewhere because the amount of compromised udders I had, I think there were 3, which is 3 too many. It was disheartening, disappointing. One side of the udder was fine, and the other side was hard with mastitis, which wasn't there last fall during breeding. Unless I totally missed it, and I'm usually not that scatterbrained. It was a good wake-up call to realize I need to be more vigilant when it comes to udder health of my ewes. Because without a good udder, I can't raise lambs. Without a good udder, I can't milk my sheep. Yeah, that was not a fun experience. And I know it was only 3 sheep, but it should not have even been 3. So I tried really hard not to end up with bottle babies. I was really happy that in my February-March group I had no bottle babies. And all but one of my ewes with the compromised udder had enough milk on one side to raise both lambs. So I had to pull one of her lambs. And then one of my grafted lambs, a triplet whose mom had no milk. Her adopted mom decided after a week she no longer liked her adopted lamb. So she became my first bottle baby, and then the compromised udder lamb became number 2. And then I had another ewe have triplets, and she seemed to have enough milk for them. But then I realized the biggest one wasn't allowing the other 2 to nurse and kept knocking them off of mom each time they nursed. So mom loved her lambs, had enough milk for all 3 of her lambs, but had one bratty little bully kid. So there became my next bottle baby. My next bottle baby ended up being rejected by mom, again at about a week old. Mom loves the twin sister, but refused to let this one nurse. And then my last bottle baby was a rejected triplet. She was the second born out of 3, and when she was born, she was like up trying to get under mom to nurse, and mom was kind of like scooting away and moving her. And I thought, oh, you can't be rejecting her. You just had her. Well, then she turned around and there was like a head looking at me from her back end. I'm like, oh, maybe that's why you're trying to push her away, because you're trying to lay down so that you can push out number 3. Well, then about probably 2 days later, because I like to leave my triplets in the jugs a little bit longer just to make sure that they're getting all the colostrum out of mom, I noticed that second one that she'd kind of been knocking a little bit when she was having the third one, she was knocking it away. I mean, just did not want it anywhere near her, would not let it nurse. I'm like, well, crap. So that became my last bottle baby. I definitely have my hands full with these guys. 4 times a day feeding does not leave me much free time. So even with all the difficulties, which sounds like there was a lot, but honestly, they were so minimal. If I hadn't written them down in my notes to add to the use records later, I probably wouldn't have remembered half of them. This was a really good lambing group. So easy and really uneventful. All right, let's get into the details of how this group really did. I bred 63 ewes. 4 of those missed, and since this is their second time missing, they will get culled. So that brings bred ewes down to 59. From those 59 ewes, I had 110 lambs. 4 were stillborn. 56 were ewe lambs, and 50 were ram lambs. I ended up with 17 singles, 33 sets of twins, and 9 sets of triplets, which gives me a lamb crop percentage of 186%. My goal is always 180%, so I call this a win. So just to compare from the February and March group, where I had almost all of my first time ewes and specifically bred for singles, I had 37 singles from that group, 1 set of triplets, and 20 set of twins. That group, I did only have 2 stillborns, so that was definitely better. But there were only 80 lambs out of 56 ewes, which gave me 137% lamb crop. So basically, I had 1 extra ewe bred in my in my April-May group than I did my February-March group, and had an extra 30 lambs from that group. I call that pretty good. So I'm really, really happy with my results from this lambing group. And I am super short on time this week, and I do apologize for that. I will be back next week to talk about older ewes. I mentioned today that I have a ewe that is 10 and some 7 and 8-year-old ewes. What's the plan for them? Can they still be milked? How old is too old to milk, to lamb, to thrive? And what are your options? I will discuss all of that next week. Also, I did an interview with a good friend of mine that I will be bringing to you next month, and she suggested I put video to the podcast up on YouTube. What are your thoughts? Good idea? Bad idea? Don't care? Speak to me. Tell me your thoughts. Do you really need to see more of my face? All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me today. As always, I appreciate you being here and thank you for your support. I would be ever so grateful if you would leave a review or share this podcast with your dairy sheep loving friends. Anything to get the word out. If you want to follow the chaos around the farm, you can find me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Hidden Hollow Sheep Dairy. If there are any topics you are interested in, or if you are interested in being a guest on the podcast, please let me know. Thanks for being here, guys. We'll talk to you again next week.